I never expected tonight to feel like it was following me, instead of me following it. The streets were empty, slick with rain, the neon signs flickering like they were struggling to stay awake. My bike rattled over potholes I had memorized years ago, and the city smelled of wet asphalt and fried food. Another night, another shift, another set of doors waiting for me to knock. The first delivery was easy. A small apartment on Maple Street. I left the food on the doorstep, taped shut against the rain. But then I noticed the folded piece of paper tucked under the lid. I didn't put it there. I never did. I unfolded it and read. I remember standing by the window, watching the snow fall. He had promised he'd come back before the first snow, but he never did. I waited until my fingers were blue. A shiver crawled up my spine. I had never met this person, never seen this apartment, yet the memory felt alive in my hands, like I was holding someone's heartbeat on paper. I stuffed the note into my pocket and pedaled on, the wind catching my jacket, whispering secrets I couldn't understand. Next stop was a duplex on Harrison Avenue. Again, food left untouched, a note slipped under the lid. The walls smelled of burnt coffee and old books. I told her I loved her every day until she stopped answering. Even then, I left the cup on the table, hoping she'd see it someday. I'd paused on the curb, heart hammering. How could anyone know these details? I hadn't met these people. These homes felt empty, but these words filled them with a life I wasn't meant to see. By the fifth delivery, the notes became harder to ignore. I watched the fire from my window. My children were sleeping. I could smell the smoke before the sirens came. I tried to wake them, but it was too late. The words burned in my mind. I looked around at the silent streets, at the windows glowing faintly in the dark, and wondered if anyone else could hear the echo of these tragedies. My hands trembled as I secured the next order, ignoring the pulse of fear crawling under my skin. By midnight, the city felt like a graveyard. Every note I delivered carried a memory I shouldn't have known. Children's laughter that had never reached me, arguments frozen in time, moments of joy or despair that had ended decades ago. I couldn't stop thinking about the lives these people had lived, about the walls that had witnessed everything and now whispered it into my hands. I stopped at a corner cafe for a quick water break. The neon buzzed above me, reflected in the puddles like fractured stars. I realized the notes weren't just stories. They were confessions, echoes, pieces of people who had already passed, reliving themselves in the houses I pedaled past. I felt the weight of it pressing against my chest. I had no idea who was sending them or why, but I knew something had changed. Tonight, I wasn't just delivering food. I was delivering memory, grief, love, mistakes. I was carrying the ghosts of the city, one apartment at a time, and I had no way of putting them down. The next delivery made me hesitate at the door. The apartment building was old, windows dark, but the note was already waiting under the food container. I unfolded it slowly. I remember the sound of the train every night. I would stand on the balcony, holding my baby, hoping the noise would scare the nightmares away. I couldn't save him from the fever, and the city kept moving. My stomach turned. The memories were all real, all tragic, all impossible for me to know. I looked up at the building and felt the walls staring back, cold and indifferent. The letters were not warnings. They were evidence of lives that had ended here, of grief frozen in time. I pedaled on, my heart pounding louder than the bike tires on wet asphalt. Every note after that was heavier, darker. He kissed me goodbye in the morning. By evening, I found the note he left in the kitchen. I won't be coming back. I waited at the window until my reflection grew pale. I began to notice patterns. The homes, the notes, the memories, they weren't random. They were aligned with every house I passed that night. Each note was a piece of a puzzle, a story of someone who had died, their last moments trapped in the rooms I delivered to. By the final delivery, the air was almost still, the rain slowed to a mist. I approached the last house cautiously, food in my hands. The note was waiting. I unfolded it and froze. I remember him leaving. I remember the sirens and the neighbors' faces pressed against the glass. I remember standing there holding my hands, waiting for someone to save me. No one came. A sudden chill ran down my spine. The memory was mine. I had never seen this house before, never met these people. And yet the memory was mine, my own fear, my own helplessness. I dropped the food and the note. The realization hit me with full force. I had been delivering not just memories, but truths. Truths of lives that had ended in these very rooms. Every note, every sentence, every whisper I carried was a story of someone who had lived and died here, and now, through some impossible thread, they were entrusted to me. I backed away, heart racing, the city around me suddenly silent, except for the echoes of lives long gone. The streets were empty, but full in a way I could no longer ignore. The night had handed me something I wasn't ready for. The notes were not for me to read. They were for the world to remember, for the living to acknowledge, even if only in fear, in wonder, in silence. I pedaled home slowly, the final note folded in my pocket. Rain had stopped. Streetlights glimmered on puddles like quiet memories. I knew the night had changed me. I had become a carrier of the city's ghosts. Tomorrow I would ride again, and again, and again. Because some stories don't end. They wait, they whisper, they need someone to deliver them, and I am that someone. The rain tapped against my windshield like fingers drumming in impatience. I adjusted the rearview mirror, watching the empty streets flicker under the dull streetlights. Nights like this, I could feel the city's pulse uneasy, restless, like it was waiting for something. I shifted in my seat and heard the soft ping of a message alert on my dashboard. Nobody, I reminded myself. Nobody at this hour. The first passenger appeared out of the darkness, a small figure with a hood pulled tight, clutching a tattered backpack. She slid into the back seat without a word. "Where to?" I asked. "Just anywhere," she murmured. I started driving. The cab smelled faintly of wet asphalt and upholstery cleaner. She stared out the window, teeth pressed together, fingers twisting the straps of her bag. Then she began speaking, quietly at first. "When I was 7, she said, voice trembling, I found a door in the basement of our old house. It was small, half hidden behind boxes. My parents never noticed it. I went inside once, just once, and I saw shadows moving without anyone there. They whispered my name. I ran, and the door vanished. I swear it vanished." I nodded, keeping my eyes on the road. A chill ran down my spine. There was nothing extraordinary about basements, nothing supernatural. Yet her voice carried the kind of fear that could burrow into your chest. "Did it ever happen again?" I asked. She shook her head. "No, but sometimes I wake up and I can hear it again, calling me, always calling." Her stop came quickly, an old building at the edge of the city. She paid in exact change, left a crumpled note on the seat. I glanced at it as she disappeared into the rain. It said only, "Don't forget the door." I drove on, streets empty and wet, and soon another figure appeared. A man this time, broad shoulders, hat pulled low, cigarette glowing in the dark. "Downtown," he said, voice like gravel. He didn't speak for a while, just stared out the window as we passed neon signs and shuttered shops. Then, without warning, he started. When I was 9, I lived across from an abandoned house. Every night, I'd hear someone crying inside. I never went in, but one night I saw a face pressed against the window, pale, eyes wide. My mother told me it was the wind. I knew it wasn't. His words hung in the cab like smoke. I wanted to dismiss it, but the unease was spreading through my chest. "It's not gone," he said suddenly, almost to himself. "Sometimes I hear it calling my name, even now." He left without another word, leaving the meter still running. I wiped my hands on my jacket, trying to shake off the feeling. 2 passengers, 2 childhood memories that clawed at the bones. Hours passed. The rain never stopped. The city grew quieter, and then she appeared, the 3rd passenger, small, elderly, with eyes that flickered in the dim cab light. "To the bridge," she said. She spoke in fragments, at first about her life in the countryside, then about a tree she swore moved when she wasn't looking, branches stretching like arms, leaves whispering secrets she couldn't understand. "I buried a box under that tree," she said, "filled with letters I wrote but never sent. When I went back years later, the box was gone. Only the earth had moved, like someone had walked through it while I slept." I glanced at her, heart thudding. The air in the cab grew heavy, thick with the weight of stories that refused to be forgotten. They all had that same thread fear rooted in childhood, a presence that lingered, impossible to ignore. My hands tightened on the wheel. A thought hit me, sudden and cold. These were not stories I'd heard before. These were lives I didn't know, names I didn't recognize. And yet, I told myself it was the radio, or maybe the storm, but the feeling didn't go away. It followed me like a shadow. And that's when I saw it, a small figure ahead, standing in the middle of the street, unmoving. I slowed, heart hammering, and when it lifted its head, I froze. The face was familiar, but I had never seen it, not in person, not in photos. Yet the eyes, the same eyes I had glimpsed in the reflections of those passengers. It was then I realized these were not random memories. These were lives that had brushed against mine in ways I had never understood, and tonight they were catching up. I parked the cab a few blocks away and watched the figure vanish into the fog that clung to the street. My chest ached, and my hands were clammy. The rain had slowed, but the city felt heavier, quieter, as if holding its breath. The next passenger was younger, maybe 16. He slid into the back seat, hoodie damp, eyes wide with something I could not name. "To the old train yard," he said. His voice was low, almost a whisper. I nodded, glancing at him in the rearview mirror. "Do you mind if I ask? Why there?" He shook his head, almost violently. Then he began. "When I was 8, my friend and I found a tunnel under the tracks. No one knew it was there. We played there every day after school, but one afternoon I saw something that made me run home screaming. A man. No, not a man. A shadow. It followed me, always watching. I thought it was gone, but I hear it sometimes, in the rustling of the rails, calling my name." I swallowed hard, gripping the wheel. Every story was a thread, stitching itself into something I couldn't see yet, but I could feel in my bones. The cab felt alive with the echoes of fear, as if all these moments, these stolen childhood memories, were converging inside me. He left quietly at the yard, leaving the door open, the damp night air swirling inside. I sat for a moment, hands on the wheel, trying to steady myself. That's when I noticed the small notebook on the passenger seat. It wasn't mine. I hadn't seen it before. Flipping it open, I found pages filled with notes, drawings, and names that made my stomach tighten. Each one matched a story I had heard tonight. Each one matched a face I had glimpsed in fleeting reflections. And then, scrawled in shaky handwriting at the bottom, you were there too. I closed the notebook with a snap. My mind raced. I had no idea why these memories belonged to strangers, why they were resurfacing in my cab. But one thought refused to leave. What if they weren't strangers at all? The rain stopped. The streets were slick and deserted. I drove aimlessly, trying to clear my mind. That's when the next passenger appeared. A woman, tall, wrapped in a coat that smelled faintly of smoke. She slid in without looking at me. "To anywhere," she said, voice flat. She spoke slowly, deliberately, telling a story of a doll she had buried in the garden as a child. It had eyes that seemed to follow her. One night, it moved. She never told anyone, but the fear stayed with her, buried like the doll itself. Her stop was the last. She left silently, leaving a faint scent of smoke behind. I sat alone, staring at the empty streets, notebook still on the seat. That's when I realized the truth. All of them, the children, the shadows, the whispers, they were not random. They were pieces of a past I had forgotten, fragments of lives that intersected with mine before I even knew how to remember. Names I never knew, faces I never met. Until now. And then it hit me. A memory buried deep and cold resurfaced. I was 7. I was in a basement. I saw shadows moving. I heard whispers calling my name. The memory was mine, but it wasn't mine alone. It had belonged to them too. I was not just a driver tonight. I was a collector of fears, a keeper of forgotten threads. And the city, the rain, the streets, they were all part of it, drawing me closer to something I could not escape. I started the engine, notebook open, heart pounding. Every name, every story, every fleeting reflection, I could see the connections now. They had all brushed against me, and tonight they had come alive in my cab. The headlights caught something ahead, a shadow, moving, flickering like smoke. I slowed, fear pressing against my ribs. And then I saw the face, my own face, staring back at me from the darkness. Not in a mirror, not in a window, but standing in the middle of the street, watching, waiting. I realized then that I had been driving toward this moment all night, toward the memory that was never just mine. The stories, the whispers, the shadows, they were all parts of me scattered across the city, waiting for me to remember. I stepped on the brake, heart in my throat. The shadow didn't move, and yet I knew it would follow me forever, through every street, every night, every rain-soaked hour. Because some memories are not meant to be forgotten, some fears are not meant to fade, and some lives are never truly separate. I sat there, engine idling, rain dripping from the roof, and understood the city's pulse. It was mine, and it was theirs, and it would never stop. The cab was silent, too silent, and I knew, without doubt, that this night was only the beginning. I never liked the night shift, but it paid more than the day hours. The call center was half empty after midnight. Most desks were dark, computers off, chairs pushed in neatly. Only a few of us stayed until morning. I often wondered why I even accepted the job. Answering complaints about lost deliveries and billing errors at 3 a.m. was enough to ruin anyone's nerves. That night began like every other. A cup of stale coffee, the hum of fluorescent lights, the low buzz of servers in the corner. I logged into the system, adjusted my headset, and waited. Calls usually came slowly at this hour, but the first one came almost immediately. "Support, this is Aaron speaking. How can I help you? At first, silence. Then breathing. Slow, steady. I repeated myself. This is Aaron. Do you need assistance? A whisper finally came through. You never came back for her. I froze. The voice was male, thin, trembling. I asked who he was trying to reach, but the line disconnected. No number showed on the screen, just unknown. My hand shook as I logged the call. I told myself it was probably a prank. The night shift attracted those. But the words sat heavy in my head. You never came back for her. Minutes later, another call came in. Support, this is Aaron. This time a woman answered, her voice sharp but quiet. The house still smells like smoke. I can't sleep because of it. Do you remember? I leaned back, staring at the monitor. I think you have the wrong number. No, she said. You promised you wouldn't leave me there. Before I could ask more, the line went dead again. I sat in silence, head set still against my ear. A faint reflection in the monitor caught my eye. For a split second I thought someone was standing behind me, but the office was empty, only the rows of dark desks. By 1 a.m. I was sweating. I kept glancing at the glass door at the end of the room. Every call since midnight was from unknown. The third call was worse. Support, Aaron speaking. The sound of water. Then a girl's voice, maybe no older than 12. It's cold down here. Why did you push me in? I ripped the headset off. My pulse raced so hard I felt dizzy. I checked the call log, but nothing was recorded. It was as if the line had never connected. I forced myself to breathe, told myself I was imagining it. Stress, fatigue, nothing more. But deep down I knew the voices were real. They spoke too clearly, too personally. At 2, I went for another coffee. The break room smelled like cleaning chemicals. I avoided the mirror above the sink. For some reason, I didn't want to see myself. I stayed until my hands stopped trembling. When I returned to my desk, my computer screen was lit with a new message. Not an email, not a system notification. Just a black window with white letters, ISEU. The cursor blinked underneath. I touched the keyboard, but the window closed on its own. The next call rang instantly. I answered with a shaky voice. Support. This is Aaron. It was a man this time. Calm, too calm. You left the door unlocked. My stomach dropped. I looked at the glass door again. It was shut. But was it locked? I couldn't remember. Who is this? I asked. You know me, the man replied. You always did. Stop pretending. Click. Line dead. I pulled my headset off again. I thought about going to security, but we didn't have any guards at night. Just cameras. I glanced at the one above the corner of the office. A red light blinked. I wondered who was watching. By 3 I couldn't focus. I was waiting for the next call, waiting to hear another voice from somewhere I didn't understand. And it came. Support. This is Aaron. Breathing. Then the same girl as before. Do you remember the basement? You told me it would be fun. I slammed my fist against the desk. Stop calling me. But she only laughed. A soft, broken laugh. It's not a call. You're remembering. Then silence. The words stuck with me. Not a call. You're remembering. I rubbed my eyes until they burned. I wanted to go home, but the shift was only halfway done, and some part of me didn't want to leave. It felt like if I walked out now, something would follow me. Something worse. Around 4, the lights above me flickered. My monitor froze. The reflection in the screen grew darker, as if the room behind me had lost all light. I didn't want to turn around. Then the phone rang again. I answered with shaking hands. Support, this is Aaron. The voice was mine. Not similar, not close, exactly mine. You left us all, that's why we're here. I couldn't speak. Hearing myself on the line felt worse than anything before. The echo carried every crack of fear in my tone. The other Aaron continued. We waited in the fire. We waited in the water. We waited in the dark. You promised every one of us something, and you never came back. The line clicked off. I pulled the headset away and stared at the phone. I wanted to rip the cord out of the wall, but it was wireless. I thought about shutting down the computer, but my screen blinked awake before I touched it. Words filled the black background again. Turn around. I couldn't. My body locked in place. Sweat ran down my face. The phone rang again, and again, every 2 seconds. Unknown, unknown, unknown. I hit accept without even speaking. A chorus of voices poured through my headset. Dozens of them, men, women, children, all whispering the same sentence over and over. We see you. I ripped the headset off and threw it across the desk. The voices still echoed, faint but clear, coming from the speakers of the computer now. I turned off the monitor. Black. Still, the voices filled the room. I finally forced myself to look behind me. The office was empty, but the reflections on the other monitors weren't. Every dark screen showed people standing between the rows of desks. Figures burned, drowned, broken. Faces I didn't know, or maybe faces I should have known. I ran to the glass door. It opened without resistance. I sprinted down the hall toward the exit. The building was silent, every office dark. The hum of servers followed me like a pulse. At the front entrance, I reached for the lock. The glass doors wouldn't budge. They felt solid, like part of the wall. I pulled, shoved, kicked. Nothing moved. Behind me, a phone began to ring. Not just one, all of them. Every desk in the building lit up. Unknown, unknown, unknown. I covered my ears and backed away, but the sound filled the hall. It wasn't ringing anymore. It was screaming. A high, distorted pitch that drilled into my head. Then silence. I opened my eyes. I was back at my desk, my coffee half full. The clock on the wall showed 11:59 p.m. My shift hadn't even started. The headset was in my hand. The computer waited for me to log in, and the phone rang. Support, I heard myself say, voice shaking. This is Aaron. How can I help you? The line was silent, then breathing. You never came back for her.